Hey guys, thanks for joining me. This is Angie at Chicken Scratch. Today we're going to be making a face mask. You're going to need 2 pieces of cotton fabric that measure 9 by 6 inches and then 2 pieces of elastic that measure 7 inches. You can use a 1/4 inch or an 1/8 of an inch or whatever you can find. We're going to place our fabric right sides together and pin it or clip it. And then we want to open up the end and attach our elastic. So I'm going to pin the elastic in this first corner, and then we want to make sure that we keep the elastic flat. So once I pin this side, I'm going to go over to the right side, making sure that I keep it flat. Okay, so I'm not going to show the other end. It's exactly the same way. So I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine and we're going to sew it, and we're going to leave a small opening so that we can turn this right side out. So before I take it over to the sewing machine, I'm just going to go ahead and re-clip this, and then we'll head to the sewing machine. Okay, I'm placing this on my sewing machine and I'm going to sew about a 1/4 inch seam. You don't have to be too particular about it, and you do want to make sure that you remember to leave a opening so that we can turn this right side out, okay? Okay, so now we want to snip each of the corners before we turn this right side out. So I'm just going to cut all 4 corners. Okay, so now we're going to turn this right side out, and we want to remove those 4 pins that was holding the elastic. So there's pin number 1, and then we're going to look for the second one, hopefully without poking ourselves. There's the second one. And then now at the other end, we've got the 3rd and the 4th. There we go. And one more. Okay, so now we're just going to flatten this out, and then we're going to get our iron and our pressing mat, and that'll make it a little bit easier to sew around the edges. So I'm just going to iron this real quick, and then we will pin that opening and sew it. And then we'll come back after we sew it and do our pleats. Okay, so here's my seam, and it takes me a minute to get this right. I'm not the best at this part, but I'm just trying to make sure that it looks good. So once I get it in the position that I want it, then I will pin it, and then we'll take it over to the sewing machine, okay? Okay, so this step is the pleats, and don't let this intimidate you because it doesn't have to be perfect. Every one of these that I've made is a little bit different, and it's okay. So you just want to keep the pleats going in the same direction horizontally. So as you can see, going from left to right, that's pretty much the same distance. It might be off a tad, but it doesn't really matter. So you're making 3 pleats for an adult size face mask. And now I'm attempting the 3rd pleat. You can make them a little smaller, you can make them a little bigger. This is probably my 7th face mask this week, and they all turned out a little bit different, but they still look good. Okay, so I'm going to press this again just to hold all of that in place. You can skip that part if you want. Yeah, okay. Okay, so now we're sewing those pleats. I'm going to be sewing down the right side and the left side, and it looks like my camera got shifted just a little bit, so I'm sorry about that. You will see me using my seam ripper because I want to keep those pleats flat and I don't want to sew my finger. So I am using my seam ripper, and normally I use another little tool, a stiletto tool. I think that's what it's called. But anyway, I'm using the seam ripper to hold the pleat flat while I'm sewing it. And I'm trying to connect my stitching on the sides with my existing stitching on the other side. Hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, I'm just connecting my sewing line. Okay, so now I'm going to do the opposite side, and I don't think you need any explanation. Again, I'm using my seam ripper to hold the pleat in place. Okay, so we've completed it. Now the next step is I want to take my snips here and I want to trim all the loose threads. Yeah, there's quite a few loose threads. And my bobbin messed up right smack dab in the middle of this, so I have some extra threads I need to fix on there, but just ignore it. One of the differences between this one and the one I'm about to show you is that my seam allowance was about, it looks like a 1/4 inch or maybe even a little less on this one. On the one I made, which I'm about to show you, I had like a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So if you look right here on the left and the right, you can see it has a larger seam allowance. I think I like the larger better than the smaller, but whatever you prefer. Okay, if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks a lot. Bye.